Well, it can happen to the best of us, even our leaders. Burnout or the feeling that it's all too much can impact anyone, including pastors. This Mental Health Awareness Month, we're shining a light on the things that cause spiritual leaders to worry and even leave the ministry, and ways to care for their spiritual and mental well-being. Well, joining me now to discuss is Mark Dance. He is the Director of Pastoral Wellness at Guidestone Financial Resources, which aims to help pastors and believers start, stay, and finish well. Dr. Dance, thanks for being with us tonight. So as we just mentioned, it's Mental Health Awareness Month. Why is this an important topic for Christians particularly to discuss?
Yeah, thanks for asking that important question. It's important for Christians because Christians have a brain, right? It's part of our bodies, and so health is naturally important to everyone on the planet. And Christians believe that stewarding our heart, soul, mind, and strength um, is not just important, but Jesus said it's the most important commandment in the whole Bible, to love the Lord with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. And so mental health is just a part of health. And so I love that we're talking about this today.
You know, I want to hit back. We're 5 years into what was the COVID pandemic, which we experienced heated political climate and saw debates about shutdowns and social distancing that actually crept into the church, and it led to ministry burnout. One study showed that half of America's pastors said that they had considered quitting. Barna came out with a new survey, though, last year in 2024 that showed overall satisfaction among pastors trending upward. What do you attribute to that trend upward?
Well, I think part of it is some of the COVID fog has lifted. And so the challenges then have been, it's normalized. What Barna followed, uh, the trend before COVID was about a third of pastors seriously considered leaving the ministry. And at its peak, it went up to 42%. It's now back to where it was before, which is basically follows the same trends of the rest of the general population, which over a third are seriously considering leaving their jobs as well. I don't know a whole lot of people in any line of work who hadn't thought about leaving their job.
Do you,
But the good news is that pastors aren't bailing on their positions. They're not leaving at a rate any different now than before COVID. And so that's good news in my book.
I would have to agree. Good news there. So, you know, there was a time when mental illness carried the stigma of maybe being associated with sin. How would you say the church is doing today at addressing the issue of mental health, not just within the walls of the church, which of course is important, but also the epidemic that's affecting society at large?
Well, the church is asking questions now out loud that we used to whisper about. When we talked about mental health, generally we didn't talk about mental health. When I became a pastor back in the late 80s, there was a tension between the schools of psychology and the schools of theology that eventually they realized they weren't enemies at all, but they one didn't challenge the other, complemented the other in many ways. Also, younger ministers, younger pastors are less reluctant to talk about their problems, mental health being one of those. And so the stigma is slowly drifting away, which is encouraging. At Guidestone, where I work here, mental health claims have gone up 40% since COVID. That doesn't mean that there is a greater need. There's just a greater openness to get help in a place that may have had some stigma and where they were reluctant to get help earlier, or at least an older generation. Now they're not as reluctant to get help with mental health or any other form of health.
Dr. Dance, we only have about a minute left. There are some studies that suggest that there's a connection between strong church attendance and increased overall well-being, looking more into causation factors than rather a correlation. Does that give Christians perhaps a leg up, or maybe does it set believers up to resist seeking help, as you were just discussing before?
Well, because pastors are not reluctant to get help, they're also less reluctant to talk about mental health from the pulpit regarding themselves, or even just preaching through scripture. The Bible talks about the mind and entire Bible. And so it's always been an important biblical subject, but now it's been normalized and destigmatized. And I think that church attendance is now connected with not just spiritual health, but also the holistic, comprehensive health that the Bible teaches.
Right.
And so it becomes more relevant of a subject to people when they come. It's
All
not
right.
uncomfortable or unnatural.
We're going to have to leave it there. Again, Mark Dance with Guidestone Financial Resources. Mark, thank you so much for being with us tonight.